I think 3 of this Kohler Command swap onto a narrow frame cub. And as you can see, we've unbolted the engine. We've dropped the axle just to make it easier to get the engine out. And we're going to use this clutch hub adapter. This one came from Zach Kerber. I think it was about $55. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our stock flywheel here. And I've got some bolts that I'm going to put in here to connect to the flywheel. These are M8 by 125s. And I've also used an Allen head on them so that I can tighten them while they're inside of the clutch hub. So I'm going to put this on real quick. And we've already got this motor wired up. I kind of skipped the wiring section, but I'll go back through at a later date and show you how I wired it. It's real simple. Doesn't take but a few minutes. And the 4 bolts that you see sticking out of this clutch hub adapter are the 4 bolts that are going to actually attach this part of the clutch to that adapter. And of course this tractor is going to get an aftermarket clutch and an aftermarket flywheel a little bit later on. We're going to go with a heavier flywheel for it, just to give it a little more top end on the pulling. We're also going to give it a 3-puck clutch with probably a yellow spring, and that'll also help out as well on that drivetrain. For right now, we're just going to hook up the stock clutch that came on this tractor. Of course, if I tried to use that very much, I would blow it to pieces in very short order. So we're just doing this for the sake of marrying this drive line up. And this particular clutch has these little retainer clips on it. You don't see a whole lot of them like that, but this one's got them. Let's see if I can get it off of here. Pull those back on each one. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to simply slide this right into that new clutch hub adapter. We'll line those holes up. Put our 4 bolts in. Sorry we don't have any music in the background today. Usually we do, but we just got back from Home Depot getting those bolts. And these 4 bolts are the original bolts that I took out of the original 10 horse that were on this clutch. And I'm going to have to run and get the correct size socket. So we're going to take a quick break and then I'll get this tightened up and we'll go from there. Okay, I got those bolts in now. Now I've got to get it lined up with this shaft here, get everything slid together, And I'm going to grab some WD-40, and also when I put the new clutch in, I'm going to have to take and hit this with an easy out because I rung off a bolt in here. But for the purpose of putting everything together and show you how to do it, we're going to keep going here. We grab some WD-40. And you can just put a little bit of grease or whatever you'd like to on there. I'll just put a little bit of WD on that. And just a little bit up on these driver pins. Okay. Now to actually marry it up, I'm going to take our motor back down to where it's supposed to be. And we're going to kind of line those holes up a little bit. And there you can see how those slid in. And I'm going to take my retainer pins and put them back in place. Okay. We're going to take our engine and line it back up with our mounting bolts there. Just a second here. Not too far. Okay, I got one in over here. And you may have to work that just a little bit to get those bolts back into place. So just for the sake of that, we'll show you back here now on our clutch assembly. Now you can see that our clutch is together. And we can turn the motor as one unit. So we're going to get this engine bolted down. We're going to throw some mufflers over the exhaust so we don't wake up the neighbors, but we'll get this bolted down. We'll come right back and fire it up for you. Now I've got Cameron tightening that motor back down, and then he's going to put the front axle back together. Again, we're just going to do the front two bolts because we're going to have to tear it back down. One of the things I want to show you is here's our clutch hub adapter, and this is the stop clutch driver with the stop pins. This one's going to get an aftermarket driver as well as the aftermarket clutch. And if you can see, that's only about 1/8 of an inch thick, and that's the reason that the driver pins don't go all the way through this clutch. They're just coming out flush. When we put the aftermarket on, I will show you on mine. If you look under there, you can see that this driver is about 3/8 to 1/2 inch thick. So that's going to make up that difference so that when you put that new clutch on, those driver pins will go all the way through that new clutch. So I'll let Cameron get this put back together over here. And we'll see about getting this fired up and give it a little test and run it forwards and backwards. Okay, while Cameron's putting that back together, I'm going to show you real quick how I wired this motor. And what I've done is I've taken all of the charging system and everything off of it. If you notice, the coils that I've got are single post coils. Sometimes you'll have to buy these aftermarket with the single post on each side if you want to wire it this way. This motor has no charging system, so I have to charge it between pulls. So what I've done here is I've taken my ground wire, I've ground it to the frame, I run it to the neutral or the ground side of the battery. From there, I go up to my ignition switch with the ground side of the battery, and I come out of that ignition switch and go down to a wire that I bring over here, and I branch off of it and run one to each coil. So these two coils are wired together and go straight back to my ignition switch. From there, on the hot side, I've taken my hot cable, and this will be replaced with a longer cable that'll go back and be hidden. But this shows you much better as a visual. So my hot side goes right down to the top side of my starter, so that gives it power. And then I have a hot side coming off of the battery to my push button ignition. The other side of the push button ignition goes down through the tunnel, through the frame, and comes back up here to my hot side of the starter underneath. And that, at this point, is all of the wiring that's done, and that's all that it requires to run this tractor. A little bit later on, I can show you how to hook up a kill switch or a fuel pump or different things like that. But for now, this is all that's required to run the tractor. Okay, Cameron's trying to wind up on getting that motor hooked back down. We'll get the axle in. Meanwhile, to keep from getting evicted from this building, it's always nice to have a couple of old mufflers laying around that are cut off of something. And we'll slide those over the headers on here so that it's not so loud when we test it out. I'll show you how to mount a gas tank later. This doesn't work real good.